I'm Dr. Philippa Whitford. I'm the MP for Central Ayrshire, which is in southwest Scotland. And having lived and worked in Gaza, like many people, that has been my focus over the last 5 months and has clearly been the focus of media and a lot of the international attention. But I think it's really timely, and my thanks to CABU for organising this event with the Physicians for Human Rights Israel on prison conditions and systematic violations of the rights of Palestinians in custody, because it's very easy for the West Bank to get overshadowed. It's very easy for the abuse of prisoners, the arrests and handling of children to have just dropped off the agenda. And that's exactly what we've seen over the last 5 months. So I'm delighted that we've got 3 speakers here from PHRI who are going to give us a background on what's going on. If I can introduce the first, that is Haya Abu Warda, who is the International Advocacy and Resource Development Coordinator at PHRI. And I ask Haya now if you could introduce the organization and give us a little bit of a background. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Philippa. So my name is Haya Abu Warda. I'm the International Advocacy Coordinator at PHRI. PHRI is an Israeli-Palestinian human rights organization founded in 1988 by a group of physicians, volunteer physicians, Palestinians and Israelis. And we work through humanitarian aid and policy change to promote, protect, and defend the right to health of Palestinians, statusless individuals, and the incarcerated community in Israeli prisons and detention centers. We work through 2 volunteer-operated clinics. Our open clinic offers free medical services to asylum seekers and statusless individuals, and our mobile clinics that goes to the West Bank and in Gaza to provide medical services to Palestinians who rather don't have access to these kinds of medical services. We also work to protect the rights of incarcerated individuals in Israeli prisons and detention centers. Oneg and Naji operate in a department that does advocacy, data collection, internal Israeli lobby policy change, as well as legal litigation against oppressive policies and practices. I want to pass it on to Oneg to start by presenting our latest report on the systematic violations of human rights of Palestinian in detention centers since October 7th.
I can just introduce Oneg Ben-Dror. She is the project coordinator in the Prisoners and Detainees Department of PHRI. She documents systemic human rights violations and with a particular focus on the right to health and mental health within prisons. So over to you, Oneg.
Thank you very much. To speak about the systemic violations of Palestinians, I would first say that the conditions of Palestinians in prison, also in general, also before, has been difficult, and they suffered from different violations of human rights. The beginning of the war is simply crushing their rights, and which is led by a policy which I think there is no other way to describe it besides a revenge policy. A policy that the prison service called it a lockdown policy, which means that they try to isolate the people and to disconnect them from the outside. So Palestinians inside prison were not allowed to leave their cell most of the time. There were no electricity, no water, no speaking of hot water, no yard. And in some prisons, this is still the case today. Strict restrictions on lawyer visits. There are prisons that we simply they don't answer us or our lawyers on our behalf to visit Palestinians in prison. And those who do, usually they either can give a date for another month, 2 months, and very number of people. Preventing family visits, and that's important to mention that calls to family or others were not allowed for Palestinians also before the war, and now this is not allowed, and also family visits is forbidden completely. Since the beginning of the war, prison guards have made raids in all cells of Palestinian prisoners, and they confiscated private property, including clothing, food, and books and other personal items. Since we are now in the winter, there were people that told us that they wear the same T-shirt they were wearing the beginning of October, and the prison has failed to provide Palestinian in prison warm clothing. Food is very, very limited and bad quality. And we face a denial of medical care. People are not allowed the clinics inside prisons, even diabetes and cancer patients, not speaking of outpatients clinics, and again, including cancer patients. Besides that, also the Red Cross is not allowed to visit prisons. And on top of all of that, we got dozens of testimonies of people who complained about violence, humiliation, abuse. Prison guards have been raiding the wards, and we heard really terrible stories. And what I described till now is about the prison service, the Israeli prison service. Most of the detainees and the prisoners kept there are Palestinians from the West Bank. And I would say also that since the beginning of the war, about 100 people from the West Bank are being arrested almost every day. And just to give you a bit of numbers, so before the war, there were about 5,000 Palestinian prisoners inside the Israeli prison service. Now it almost doubled itself. It's more than 9,000. Before the war, there were a bit more than 1,200 people under administrative detention. Now we are speaking about more than 3,600. And the beginning of March, it was about 3,600, but we believe that now it's more. that's what is happening in prison. Now I will speak about the Gazan detainees, which are, we can speak about two distinct groups. There are those who had permits, either medical permits or work permits, and people who come either for treatment or for work inside Israel. And after the beginning of the war, in the first days, their permit has been revoked, and people got arrested. They were kept, and still some are kept in military base. There is no connection with these people. We don't manage to, there were about 5 lawsuits, appeals to try to locate those people, and all have been rejected. I would say that even for Israel, there is no legal frame to be able to capture these people. The way they frame it is that they are keeping those people until they can release them. Some has been released, but our estimation is that still there are some few hundreds of people that are still kept inside Israel. And the second group are Gazan residents who have been arrested either in the first days of the war or since then from inside Gaza. We are speaking about children, women, old people. We know of 100 medical staff that have been taken from schools, shelters, hospitals. Only today, this morning, 80 people have been taken from Shifa Hospital inside the Gaza Strip. And they are being kept in the south, in a military base. We call it forced disappearance. The UN estimation is that 3,000 people are in this group. Just to give you an example of the arbitrary detention, we had a case of a woman, 82 years old, with Alzheimer's, who have been arrested, and only after we asked to visit her and we even appealed to court, she has been released. So people are being arrested, some are being released, but while they are being I would say that there are no official information. There is no official information about these people, where they are being captured, under which conditions. No contact with these people. From the little we know, and the people that are being released, we know of prolonged restraint. People are handcuffed behind their back during all the time, blindfolded, in a bending position most of the day. We know of also that they are subjected to violence, abuse, also physical and sexual, and different kinds of humiliations. And I would just add that any request or appeal to the court has been denied, rejected, and the Israeli court has refused to safeguard the conditions and the well-being of these people. And now I will give the floor to Naji.
Okay, thank you very much, Oneg. If I can introduce Naji Abbas. He is the director of the Prisoners and Detainees Department at PHRI. He's provided assistance in numerous cases of medical neglect in Israeli prisons but has also managed to spearhead some significant improvements in the prison health system. Over to you, Naji.
Thank you, Philippa. And thanks for Joseph and Cabo for having us. As Philippa said in the beginning, it's a very important thing, and it's a big thing happening in prisons. But with everything is happening in Gaza, it seems like thank you for hearing us today. To describe and to continue what my colleague Honig started to say, I want to say it's not, that's actually what we thought in the beginning in October, that it will be a change of a condition of the inside the prisons, and the Israeli authorities will make the conditions of the Palestinian prisoners harsher or more harder. But when our lawyers started to visit prisoners, we started to understand that it's a very different thing from what we know. We have since October, with all the difficulties that Onik spoke about, that the lawyers can't visit, or there's no family visits, or the Red Cross are not entering the prisons, we managed to visit a lot of prisoners with other human rights organizations. And we have tens and hundreds of testimonies speaking about beating, systematic beating. We are speaking about beating every day without any reason, just entering the cells and start beating people. We have testimonies about very, very hard sexual assaults from guards. We are speaking about a very, very hard conditions. That we visited some prisoners that after 2 months, after October, that thanked our lawyers because it was the first time that they see the sunlight since two months. We are visiting people in the middle of January with short clothes that they wear with and in October, in the end of October and the beginning of November, we started to understand more that the situation is very, very difficult, and that the violation is very harsh when people started to get to die. In October, we started to hear about Palestinians dying inside the prisons, the Israeli prisons. Actually, till we finished our report in the end of January last month, and we published in the beginning of February, we spoke and we described 6 death cases inside the Israeli prisons. But actually, since then, there are another 6. In just 1 month, another 6 Palestinian prisoners has died inside the Israeli prison. This number is a very extreme number that never happened. And actually, our doctors of our behalf, it's actually behalf the families, but doctors who are volunteering at PHRI attended some of the autopsies for these people. And in at least in 3 cases, our doctors found signs of an assault. We are speaking about broken ribs. We are speaking about signs of assault on the whole body. And in 2 cases, in 1 case, actually, our doctor said it very clearly that the direct reason of the death is the beating. And actually, all these people, we have testimonies of prisoners who were there when they were beaten till death. Actually, because as Haya said in the beginning, we don't just document things and collect data, but we also work very hard to change the situation and to stop the situation. Usually before the war, before October, we spoke with the Ministry of Health We spoke with the Knesset member. We applied to the Supreme Court of Israel. But after the war, actually, all these tools stopped from working because we applied to the Supreme Court and with tens of testimonies speaking about what we are saying. But the Supreme Court found that it's okay, or found that we are saying general things and we are not giving specific information. That all the policies that the IPS, the Israeli Prison Service, are doing are necessarily from a security reasons or because of the war. Actually, that's what the Supreme Court said. It's okay to let people sleep on the floor during a war. So all our tools that we use to change the situation. So that's why we got to a point that the only way to try to change the situation is to go to the media and to speak out about these things. So that's what we started to do in November. And actually, after we published a few cases of the beating and the violation and the torture that the Palestinian prisoners are speaking about, we felt like that situation became more calm and the beating stopped. But actually, that's not the case because we are speaking, as Onyx said, we are speaking about 10,000 prisoners. We and the other organization, we can't visit 10,000 people. So in some prison, we found out the beating stopped, but in another prison, after 1 week or 2 weeks that we visited, we understood that no, the situation is the same. And the beating, the torture, the violation is continuing. And actually, in some point, even if the beating, the systematic and the daily beating stopped, in the last month, the prisoners who died, we know that all of them had medical conditions before the arrest. In one case that our doctor attended the autopsy, we found it, our doctor said it very clearly, that the guy, we are speaking about 21 years old guy, who were arrested a few months before the war, and he has a chronic disease that needs a special diet. And all what the IPS needed to do is to give him his special diet. But he didn't get his special diet since October. So for weeks, that's what our doctor is saying. For weeks, he suffered from pain because he didn't get the right food. And after that, he didn't get any treatment. So for weeks, he suffered till he was transferred lastly to a hospital, but our doctors say it was too late. And after 2 or 3 hours, he died in hospitals. So, and we know about a young guy who had cancer who died last month. We know about 2 people who were in a wheelchair even before the arrest, and they both died during February. In some cases, we couldn't attend the autopsies because the Israeli authorities didn't notice the families that there is an autopsy. We attended just 5 from 10 autopsies. Till now, actually, our reports, the reports that our doctors give is a primarily reports. It's just what they saw during the autopsy. The autopsy center in Israel, Abu Kabir, who should provide a final report speaking about the direct and the specific cause of death. Till now, they didn't provide any report. We are speaking about cases autopsies that happened in October. But till now, the Israeli police and the Israeli autopsy center didn't provide any report about these deaths. So that's what the separation that we are doing. These 10 people died under the custody of the IPS, the Israeli Prison Service. since December, we start to hear about people getting killed and people dying under the custody of the army. Before the war, the Israeli army didn't kept any prisoners. All Palestinian prisoners were kept under the custody of the IPS. But since October, the Israeli army are holding thousands of people who got arrested from Gaza. And they are all defined what is called in the Israeli law illegal combat. And that means that he's not allowed to see a lawyer. He won't see a judge for weeks and for months. And these people, till now, we don't know their numbers. We don't know where they are or where the army hold them. We don't know their names. We don't know anything about the condition that they are kept in. And in December, we started to hear, not officially, we started to hear about people dying. And actually, last week, the Israeli media published that maybe, and again, it's not an official number, but the Israeli media spoke about almost 30 people who died under the custody of the Israeli army. We don't know if there are an investigation that were opened. We don't know where are these bodies, how these people died, when they died. Nobody know who are the people who died till now. So we are speaking about almost 40 people inside the IPS and the Israeli army. And actually, we are afraid that the number may be more. We can't know actually because the Israeli army till now refused to give any information. They refused to give any information about these people from Gaza. But what we know that they are being held. Even actually, our report mainly speak about the conditions inside the IPS because that's the place that we could manage to visit. And with all the horrific situation that we are describing in our report, we are afraid that the conditions and the situation under the custody of the Israeli army is even worse. And the main and the official policy of the Israeli army today, it's what we called a forcible disappearance. That when you arrest, I don't know if we can use the word arrest. Arresting is a legal word, but here it's like the Israeli army are collecting people from Gaza and then bringing them to a military base. That we don't know anything and we don't have any information about it. The main source of information is the testimonies of people who got released back to Gaza. They are speaking, and actually there is just one official document that we know of. It's a guideline of the Ministry of Health of Israel, which operate the field hospital in this military base. And even the guideline is speaking about giving treatment to people when they are cuffed behind their backs, when their eyes are covered, and any information about the doctors and who is treating them. And from the testimonies that we have, we are hearing about people were cuffed for months and their eyes were covered for months. They were forced to stay on their knees every day, from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. That's the situation. And we know that even the Ministry of Health declared in October that these people won't get any treatment in the civil hospitals in Israel. Until now, we know that civil hospitals are refusing to take and to accept these people and to give them the treatment that they need. So that's what we are afraid of, and that's the situation regarding the people from Gaza. We are still trying to apply to the Israeli courts. Till now, we applied to the Supreme Court 7 times. We didn't get any decision on the benefit of the prisoners. And we actually applied to the central courts in different cases, but also till now, that can help and change the situation.
Okay, thank you very much, Naji. I'm going to open the floor for people to ask questions or maybe just comment. And if I can ask you to put your little electronic hand up, and I'll call you in the order that you do. I'm just going to use chair's privilege to kick it off while people are thinking. You didn't particularly talk about children, either Naji or Oneg, but we've heard from colleagues who have had the opportunity with Kabu to visit the West Bank, to visit courts, etc., the appalling treatment of Palestinian children in the West Bank who are, lifted is maybe a better phrase, as you say, arrest isn't quite right. And I wonder, therefore, whether PHRI, do you include children in your work? Have you seen their numbers? Because Oneg described the overall number of prisoners doubling over the last 5 months and the number in administrative detention doubling in the last 5 months. So are we seeing that reflected in children's numbers? Is it worse among children? Either one of you, but just one can give me an answer on that.
About children and women, actually, in our report, we didn't separate them from the other prisoners because actually the conditions apply to all of the Palestinians inside under the Israeli custody. But from what we know, we are speaking about tens of women who still now in the Israeli prison. And as I said, women and children from Gaza, we don't know anything. We don't know their number, but we know that there are a lot of women, a lot of children from Gaza who were arrested. As Oneg mentioned, the Israeli army actually arrested 8 old woman, and they actually claimed officially that she is an illegal combat when we tried to visit her. But in November, when the first deal, where all the women and the children in the Palestinian were released in the end of November, but since then, tens of arrests of children and women. We are speaking about something like 160 children inside the Israeli prisons and about 70 women in prison. I just wanted to add, last week we visited one Palestinian woman in a prison, and she spoke about that all the women inside the Israeli prisons have medical issues, and that the IPS and the prison are refusing to bring, I don't know if the term is right, a doctor, a physician for a woman physician. Yeah, exactly. So the IPS is refusing to bring a physician. But all what we are speaking about and all the conditions that we mentioned also apply for these categories.
Okay, thanks very much, Naji. Would someone else on the call like to make a comment or ask a question of our guests?
Yeah, I would actually. Just in terms of, I'm sorry, there's not more parliamentarians here today, but in terms of some of the asks, obviously from the report specifically, what would be useful, I think, for all of you in terms of getting raised from MPs like Philippa and others that would be, any specific asks that you think that MPs here in the UK should be raising and should be putting down, either in terms of questions or statements, or so there are a variety of means in terms of written questions, or also in terms of oral question as well. But what would be helpful in terms of some of the findings of the report that could really be sort of brought out politically from members of Parliament here in the UK?
Actually, the first and the obvious request is that also actually Parliament members in Britain can ask for and call for is that the Israeli authorities, the Israeli army and the IPS to enter their facilities. A state of law, like the Israeli authorities till now, answer this request with a very bizarre answer, saying that Hamas is not letting the Red Cross to visit our prisoners in Gaza, so we are not allowing them. A state of law, a state that claims that it works by law, can't behave like this. So the first demand and the main demand is to let the Red Cross enter these facilities. That's the first one. The second one, we are asking that Parliament members to call the British government and to call the Israeli authorities to put pressure to stop these policies. And to release, actually, we are demanding to release the people who are kept without any illegal cause. We are speaking, as Onyx said, we are speaking about today almost 4,000 Palestinians who are kept under what's called administrative detention. That means they are kept without any charges, actually. And also the people from Gaza. That's what we are demanding, and that's what we think that the world and actually also Parliament members can call to put pressure in the Israeli authorities to work by their law, actually, not even the international law, by the Israeli law, to stop and to release the Palestinian who should be released.
And I would add, besides concerns and ask Lee to promote stop these human rights violations, also in regards to the Gazan detainees, also request transparency from the Israeli authorities regarding the number of Gazan detainees held in the military bases and in what status, updating accurate information on the status of the detainees. It is very important safeguard for ensuring accountability. And I would say that we sent information request about the number of Gazan detainees who died under the Israeli army custody, and they had 1 month to respond. They asked for an extension of another month till the end of February, and we still didn't get the number. So a pressure from the outside would help.
Okay, Neil.
Thank you, Philippa, Naji, and colleagues. Two questions, if possible, please. I mean, you said that there's something already like perhaps a dozen deaths in custody in the IPS, in addition to 27 or more reported under the army. It's not a nice question, but in an average year, how many deaths in custody of, say, Palestinians might you expect? Do you know? And the second question, while I'm here, is just, can you give us a sense of when, under what circumstances, perpetrators of torture and abuse at any level have been held to account by the Israeli justice system over the years, please? And thank you very much again.
Thank you. Actually, there is no number for an average deaths during the years, but we are speaking maybe about one if we are speaking about very hard people with very hard medical conditions. Like I'm working at PHRI for 5 years today. We are speaking about in the past 5 years, we are speaking about less than 10 people who died. And these people who had a very hard disease, and actually they died in the Israeli prisons because the Israeli law don't allow Palestinians to get released even in their last days. That's the Israeli law. So we are speaking about 1 or 2 during a year. So 10 in 5 months is a very extreme number. And actually we are speaking about something like 40 with the people from Gaza. Okay, what the second question? Sorry.
About whether suspected perpetrators have been held to account for administering torture, beating, denial of medical care, etc. in history, as well as now.
Yeah, in Israel, as Onyx said, also before the war, the conditions of the Palestinian prisoners weren't like perfect. There were a lot of problems, and actually, usually before the war, if we heard and worked in torture cases and violence, it was during the investigations. Not inside the prisons. The Israeli court actually 20 years ago said, and the law in Israel said that torture are not allowed, but the court spoke about that what's called it's called איך להגיד סביר, עונג, סליחה.
Reasonable.
Reasonable accepted by the Israeli law. What reasonable means, we don't know. We worked in a lot of cases that people almost died in the past few years during the investigations. That's
Okay, anyone else like to ask a question or make a comment on what we've heard?
I would just add that also before the beginning of the war, we saw a change also and deterioration also since the previous government. And the minister who is in charge of prison is Ben-Gvir. I'm sure you heard of him. So also before the war, this government tried to pass a law to deny a medical improving life care for Palestinians. It was specifically against Palestinians held in prison. And there is no such a medical term, you know, improving life conditions. This minister tried to provide people used to cook their own food inside the cells. He tried to forbid that, and we saw different ways of him trying to make the life of Palestinians in prison harder. But now it's just a tragedy. It's in completely different scale.
Okay, thank you, Oneg. Chris Doyle, were you wanting to come in there? I saw you switch your camera on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philippa. I just wanted to ask whether the speakers, to what extent they were aware of how much pressure has been put on this issue by varying governments, whether it's the US, UK, or the EU. Do you feel that ambassadors in Tel Aviv have been raising this issue at all with the Israeli authorities? Thank you very much.
To be honest, we didn't meet with anyone from the British embassy here. We met a lot of diplomats from the EU, and Britain today is not from part of the EU. But we met with a lot of diplomats from different embassies, asking them to put pressure. If they worked on that, and what effect this pressure have, we don't know. But it seems like it's a very little effect till now, because the situation is staying the same since 6 months today. We know that even the Red Cross started to speak with embassies and with diplomats, asking help to allow them to enter the Israeli facilities. But till now, nothing changed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naji. Anyone else want to either ask a question of our speakers or make a comment before we wind up? As they say, speak now or forever hold your tongue. It just remains to me then to thank Naji, Oneg and Haya for speaking to us today and unpacking, as I said, this really important but overshadowed issue right now because of the focus on Gaza, and to thank Joseph and Chris from CABU for organising it. Obviously, they are giving us as MPs regular briefings, particularly the online ones, which are very helpful to allow people to be updated on what's really happening within Gaza, within the West Bank, within Israel, because otherwise all we get is the sanitized information on the mainstream media, which is not unpacking these issues. So thank you to all three, and thank you, Joseph, for organising. So good afternoon.